Hey everybody, I'm Grandmaster Ben Feingold here with our most popular class ever. It's on Judit Polgár, the greatest female player of all time and one of the greatest players of all time. And I actually have a lot of personal experience, not only with Judit, but with the Polgár family, which I will incorporate into the lecture. First, I want to thank our sponsor, Robert Veneris, who's actually with us today, watching the lecture live, as well as several other people. So hopefully they'll ask questions. Now, something that nobody knows except me and Karen, although other people do know it, but not people that are here, you guys don't know it, is there's a book coming out called The Queen of Chess, How Judit Polgár Changed the Game. It's a picture book by Lori Walmark, illustrated by Steve Lewis. And I wrote a blurb for that book, and that book hits bookstores on July 25th. So you guys can buy that book, I guess on Amazon or your local bookstores. And it's a picture book about Judit Polgár. And there's actually a cartoon of me, although I couldn't recognize me because I was so devastatingly handsome that it didn't look like me at all, or something like that. Maybe that wasn't it. So make sure on July 25th you get your Judit Polgár book. It's a picture book. That's my kind of book. Not a lot of heavy reading, mainly pictures. So now, I always tell people, if you want to know who's more famous, so let's say you got Britney Spears and Kesha, and you're like, Britney Spears is more famous, and the other person's like, Kesha's more famous, and the other person says, who are you talking about? Who are those people? Okay, those are the three possible responses. Instead of arguing about it, what I do when I have these great important discussions is I go to Wikipedia and I see whose Wikipedia page is longer. And if somebody's page is much longer, then they win. So if you want to know if a chess player is famous, look at their Wikipedia article. If it's 10 times bigger than another chess player, okay, now you know what's up. My Wikipedia page is very small. It says Ben Feingold, the end. Okay? And then married to Karen Boyd. Okay. Now, Judit Polgár, her Wikipedia page never ends. It's the only Wikipedia page that has no end. I could scroll for the rest of the class. So you know she's really good. So I'm scrolling, you can see me scrolling, and it never stops. So that means she's really good at chess, because Wikipedia pages of chess players aren't this long unless they're really, 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 really good. And then she won all these awards. I would have won awards, but I didn't want to brag, so I didn't win all those awards. Okay? And then the references are much longer than my Wikipedia page. Very embarrassing. So they did a lot of work to make her page. I've never seen this many references for a chess player, ever. And that's longer than the rest of the Wikipedia page. 259 references. And then there's these books and so forth. And there'll be another book added when this other book comes out that I was talking about. Okay, now I want to tell you some personal stuff about Judit. I met Judit when she was 11. She was playing in the New York Open, and she needed to draw in the last round to get her first IM norm. And she was 11. And who did she play in the last round? Who remembers? Just because you weren't born yet, that's not an excuse.
She played you.
There you go. Otherwise, I wouldn't have mentioned it. I played Judit Polgár in the last round. We ended up drawing the game, and she got her first IM norm. That's when I first met the Polgárs. And when she was 13, I was at a tournament in Hastings where I actually married my first wife. The tournament was 1988 to 1989. It was a long tournament. And Judit Polgár got her last GM norm there. So I was there whenever she got norms. And then I played her in Dortmund in like 1990, and I lost. And I've never played her sister Susan. And Susan, whose original name is Zhuzha, might be more famous in the US than Judit is. because Susan's played for the U.S. and lived in the U.S. for the last 30 years. And Judit Polgár has always lived in Hungary. So we don't see as much of Judit Polgár as we hear about Susan Polgár on the internet. Judit keeps a low profile. Now, as you all know, I need somebody here to tell them you don't know it. They don't know. As you all know, there's a big women's tournament going on right now in St. Louis, the Cairns Cup or the Karens or Carns. And the reason it's called that, I'm sure you all know. Do you know why that's called that tournament? Do you know why that has that name? Anybody? No?
Rex Singfield's wife.
Rex Singfield's wife, Jeannie, that's her maiden name. Right, so the tournament's named after her. It's all women. And today on the broadcast, special guest star, Judit Polgár. So she was actually on the broadcast today about 2 hours ago talking about the games. Also, she did live coverage of Norway chess, which was great. So Judit doesn't play in tournaments anymore. Stuart retired. That's why great players of the past. But she does a lot of great commentary. And this reminds me of last week's lecture, which you guys weren't at, although Mepex might have been. And it was about Peter Leko, who also is retired, does a lot of commentary, and also played for Hungary Board 1. So every lecture I give is on Hungary's Board 1, in their 40s, doing great commentary. And Judit Polgár and Peter Leko are great commentators. Now, Judit Polgár grew up in a chess family. Her dad knows how to play chess. And you guys don't know this. I played in a chess tournament with all the Polgárs. In Belgium, the dad was playing also. Everybody was playing, and it was a 15-minute tournament, and I actually beat Judit in that tournament. That was in 1989. Now, maybe she let me win, but maybe she didn't. So, you know.
Does that include the mom?
I think the mom knows how to play chess, but she didn't play in the tournament. But yeah, she's not, the dad's not bad. He's probably 1800. Not as good as the daughters, obviously. So she got the title of Grandmaster at 15 years and 4 months. I guess when she got the Grandmaster norm in Hastings, that was her first norm. So I was there for her first norm and her first IM norm and her second GM norm. She beat me in that tournament in Amsterdam. And that was in either 89 or 90. I'll never remember. But we'll say 89. And everybody knew Judit was good when she was 9 years old. Because when she was 9 years old, she played in the New York Open unrated section, which has a lot of suspicious characters who were pretty good at chess. And she won, being 9 years old. And when she was 11, very funny personal story that has nothing to do with me, but I still feel it's personal. She was playing Emory Tate, who was a famous chess player in the U.S. who died a few years ago. And he was a famous blitz player. He would not only play great in tournaments, he was an IM, he was like to play blitz chess for money. And Emory Tate played Judit Polgár blitz chess when Polgár was 11. And Emory Tate, somebody said, "How did you do?" And Tate said, "Well, she won, but she knows who the better player is." And I said, "That's right, she does." Although I don't think he knew who the better player was, but she knew. So when she was 11, she was already a great blitz player. And when she was 13, she was already GM strength. And took her, it's time to get the norms and the rating up, obviously. And another personal story before I get to the Wikipedia article. In China, in 2011, in your favorite city, Ningbo, that's your favorite city, right? Okay, because you've heard of it. There was the World Team Championship, and Judit played for the Hungary team, and she played Yasser Seirawan, and I was coaching Yasser at the tournament. I wasn't playing because I'm not good, but I was a coach. And Yasser actually beat her on her birthday. How could he do that? What a mean guy. And Yasser actually won a medal that tournament. So I've seen the Polgár family a lot. And the last story I'm going to tell you, before the next to last one, which I'm also going to tell you, but this is definitely the last, is in 89, I was in Budapest, in Hungary, where the Polgárs lived, because a friend of mine, a student, was playing in a norm tournament, and I was his coach. And when his round was over, I said, let's go to the Polgars. Let's go find them. And I knew their address. I had their address in my address book. If you're a kid, you don't know what an address book is. But okay, I had and I found their apartment and it knocked on the door. And they opened the door and they're like, Ben, and they were all in there. And I remember Judith was like, oh, let me get you some juice. And she was the nicest. No, they were all nice. But I surprised them, and I've known them forever and ever and ever and ever. And I've played in a lot of Susan's tournaments. I got my last GM norm at Susan Polgar's tournament at Texas Tech. And I've known the whole family forever. So that's a great family. They're all great chess players. They all worked really hard. Now in the Wikipedia article, it talks about all the players and tournaments Judith's won and beaten. The most important, I think, is this part that I'm going to highlight. These are the 11 world champions that Judith has beaten in chess. I also beat 11 world champions, but then I woke up and apologized. So that was the difference. Is she actually beat 11 world champions, unlike me. And she won matches against Spassky and Smyslov also. Okay, so she retired from chess in her 30s, and she's done a lot of things that are chess related that don't necessarily mean that she's playing chess, like writing chess books, teaching at her chess school, opening chess schools, doing commentary for Super GM events, being the captain for the Hungarian team, and so forth. So it's a little, and she was inducted into the World Chess Hall of Fame in 2021, and she just has a lot of accolades. I can't really say all of her accolades because this class is less than an hour. Okay, now it's mildly insulting, a little insulting, to say that she's the greatest woman chess player of all time, which she is. She is the greatest woman chess player of all time. But she's so strong, it's much better to compare her to everybody than to just one gender. Okay, she's one of the greatest players that ever lived for men and women, and she was by far the strongest player of the three Polgar sisters, and she was the top 10 in the world, and she's the only female player to ever be one of the 10 strongest players in the world. And she definitely was. And she has a very aggressive style, so it's very fun to look at her games. They're not so easy to understand because a lot of her moves are based on calculation. So if you don't look 20 moves ahead, you might not understand her move. You're like, why did she go there? And I'm like, she saw tactics in 30 different variations and they were favorable to her. And we don't see that. And that's why she's top 10 in the world. And I'm teaching a class in my basement on the internet. Because, that's the difference. So she was really good as a kid. She was playing in World Junior and European Junior tournaments. She would always play in the boys section and she would always win. Okay, not very nice. You should let somebody else win sometimes. If you win every time, then you know how Magnus's opponents feel. Okay, and then you can see all her accolades, winning all kinds of championships, winning open tournaments, winning in Wisconsin. There's actually a movie, and you don't know what this is unless you're Rob or Mepex. There's something called VHS tapes from 40 years ago, and I actually saw a movie of a tournament that Judit Polgár played in Wisconsin, where she won the boys section, and it's a movie about the tournament. It's like an hour and a half long. Wait a minute, it says that right here, what I just said. Chess Kids featuring Polgár was filmed. The documentary did not include an interview with Polgár, but you could see her like walking around and checkmating everybody. Okay, and it talks about when she became a grandmaster and beat Spassky in a match. And the famous touch move controversy, when she played Garry Kasparov once, and she played him many times. She played him more than 12 times. When she played Garry Kasparov when he was the world champion, he reached out and he touched a piece, and he sort of barely touched it, sort of like Nakamura style. And then he moved another piece and she was like, what? What's happening here? And she didn't call the arbiter because she thought it was weird that Kasparov would break the touch move rule. And to prove that he touched the piece, there's a video replay, okay, which at that time was unusual. Now everything is videotaped, okay, but back in the 80s and 90s, there wasn't a video replay, but there was. And you could see Kasparov's hand touch the piece. And he didn't move the piece. If he did, he would have lost. It was a blunder. He made another move and he won. So very suspicious. Okay. And talks about how she's the strongest female player ever, obviously. And also, just so you're not confused, because this is my lecture, it's not close. It's like the difference between the second greatest woman of all time and the 10th greatest is smaller than the second and the first. Judith's way better than any other woman. Okay, and she's way better than almost every other man. Way better. Okay, Judith is an amazing player. I think when Judith was 15, she's probably the greatest woman player of all time. And she gained 200 points to get to her peak after that. Okay, and I got to tell you one more personal story because it's funny, then we'll get to the games. I met Judith's husband when I was in China, and they have 2 kids now. And her husband's very tall, and she's not, so it's sort of funny. He was like 6'4". He was very tall. And she told me the story of how they met. She had a sick animal, like a cat. Might have been a dog, but we'll say a cat. And she went to the vet, and she thought the vet was a good-looking guy. So then she kept going back to the vet for no reason. Oh yeah, my other animal's sick too, I guess. And then he didn't know why she came all the time, and then she figured it out. He figured it out. Then they ended up getting married. And they've been married for 25 years. So remember that if you think your vet's good looking, just keep going to the vet. Get more animals, I don't know. Okay, this was also done on Family Guy, but it was stupider on Family Guy. Okay, which is hard to believe. Okay, so you can learn a lot about Judit Polgár and the Polgár family by reading Wikipedia. And I mean, for hers, it never ends. And they talk about her veterinary surgeon husband and so forth. Okay, so let's go to the games. Okay. And you guys can see the board? Okay, good. So first game, she's black against Alexei Shirov. I'm going to show these games in chronological order. This was played when she was very young. And we're going to flip the board. And this is really good because Shirov and Judit Polgár have similar styles. They don't like draws. They want crazy game, and they want to outcalculate their opponent. Perfect. So Alexei Shirov is the perfect opponent for Judit Polgár because no punches will be pulled. They're just going to see who outcalculates who, and it's going to be a great game. Okay, Judit played the Sicilian. She always plays fighting chess. Shirov would also do that. Okay, e6. We have an open Sicilian. Okay, now, what a lot of grandmasters like to do is have their knight on f6 and their pawn on d6. But they're afraid if they play knight f6 too early, white's going to play g4, g5. So Judit played d6. She's waiting for some passive move like bishop e2 or bishop e3. Then she'll play knight f6. And Shirov's like, I don't care if you play knight f6 or not, and just plays g4 anyway. I mean, when you play g4, you're typically going to play g5 and attack the knight on f6. But there is no knight on f6. But Shirov played g4 anyway, because he's Shirov. He plays g4. That's who he is. Okay, so Judit didn't play knight f6, so there's no g5. And she played knight e7. So g4 is a little weird looking, but all right. Knight back to b3, b5, f4, very double-edged, bishop b7, queen f3. Shirov always plays the most aggressive move. Also, Judit always plays the most aggressive move. So this is great for us. g5, that's what Mipex would have played. Okay, she's fighting for the e5 square. She wants this f-pawn to go away so she can play knight e5. Okay, Shirov says, I'll be a pawn up. All right. Knight e5, the queen has to move. Queen went to g2. Now, once again, Judit plays a move that all of us would play. b4, we would play that. Knight e2, and then h5. Now, I must admit, I would never consider h5. That's not a move I would think of. Okay, but it does have a couple threats. It's threatening to take on g4 and take with the knight on g4. I would take with the pawn. So white has two ways to take the pawn. Can play gh or gh. One's en passant and one's not. Okay, he played this gh. He's thinking, okay, Judit, you're going to move your rook up, and then you can't castle kingside, and your rook's no good. But Judit played a very tricky tactical move. That's why she played h5. Now, when she played g5, she got rid of this pawn on f4, so the knight could go to e5. When she played h5, she got rid of this pawn, so now her other knight can go to f5, confusing the audience, which is you. And if you take the knight, then you lose your queen. On the other hand, black is threatening knight takes e3, which wins a piece and the game. Shirov played bishop f2, and Judit played queen takes g5, blundering her queen. What a potser. Okay, and obviously if you take the queen, I have knight f3 check, king has to go to d1, knight takes, the e-pawn is attacked twice and defended 0 times, and it's pinned, and the h-pawn is falling. And white's king is on d1. So black would be winning. Okay, so Shirov didn't do that. He played knight a5, attacking the bishop on b7. Where's the bishop going to go? I mean, I can't go to c8, because then you could take my knight. I can't go to c6, because you'll take my bishop, then you'll take my knight. I need my bishop here to pin this e-pawn. So these are the kind of crazy tactics that Judith's really good at. She's really good at seeing really far ahead and calculating and figuring out it's okay. So she played an amazing move here. She's already played like 3 amazing moves. Knight e3. If queen takes queen, knight f3 is checkmate. It's like Paul Morphy on steroids. Okay, well obviously Shirov can't lose his queen. If he plays bishop takes e3 and I take, you don't have time to take my bishop because knight f3 check and queen d2 mate. So Shirov played queen g3. Queen takes queen, knight takes c2 check, knight takes rook, knight takes bishop. It's like a scholastic game where both players are rated 100. Just lots of taking and, craziness. The difference is Judit Polgár figured out that she was winning. She's up material. She's up the exchange for no pawns. The question is she going to lose her knight in the corner or is it going to escape? And she had to figure that out before she went into this mess. So she played b3, and that gets her knight out right away. If you take, I take with the knight. If you don't take, I can play knight c2 and escape. And that's what happened. They traded. She got her knight to safety. And black's up the exchange for no pawns. And white has doubled isolated pawns everywhere. Black's knight is still amazing on e5. He played bishop e1. Shirov wants to play bishop c3. Knight f3. Bishop c3. Knight d4 check. Bishop to d6. Bishop e5. And here black is just up the exchange for nothing. And in this position, Shirov resigned because he's going to lose the endgame for sure. So that was a crazy, wild game where Judit outcalculated Shirov and played several brilliant moves. And people stopped playing g4 before the knight went to f6, but Shirov can't help himself. if you know an opening and white plays g4 early, there's a good chance Shirov invented it. Shirov likes to play g4. Okay, that was a crazy game. Okay, this game, we'll flip the board again. This is a game Judit Polgár played against Vishy Anand, and Judit had white. And this game also has crazy tactics. Okay, Anand played the Sicilian, just like the last game, except now Judit is white. And they played a Knight Orf. Judit also plays the Knight Orf with black. Bishop e3. And she played an early g4, just like Shirov. The difference is there's a knight here, so I'm going to gain a tempo attacking the knight. Okay, Vishy played one of the super complicated lines. Maybe not the best idea against Judit Polgár. Played e5. She played knight f5, or as I like to say, knight f5, right. Okay, he played g6, attacking the knight. Judith's not going to back down. Obviously, this is theory for them, and she played g5, attacking Vishy's knight. G takes f5, and instead of taking on f6, she takes on f5. It's a piece sacrifice. Now, Vishy could give back the knight if he wants to, and he played d5. This is still their prep. Black wants to play d4. Queen f3. This is still their prep. d4, long castle. Now, Vishy is known, and I've known Vishy since before I've known Judit. I met Vishy in 1986, and at the 87 World Open, we shared a hotel room with 7 other people, because that's how you did it in the 80s. You couldn't afford a hotel room, but 8 people could. Okay, there was a lot of sleeping on the floor. Okay, and I've known Vishy forever. Vishy likes wild complications and out-preparing his opponent. That's what Judit likes, so we get games like this. And I'm sure this is like near the end of their prep. Still theory. Knight bd7, unpinning the pawn to the queen, so now the pieces are forked. Bishop d2, Anand takes the knight, Judit takes back, and if you're counting pieces, I'm not saying you are, but if you are counting pieces, Judit Polgár sacked 2 pieces. So she's down 2 knights. On the other hand, Vishy's king doesn't look so good. That's not the safest king. Okay, bishop g7, giving one of the pieces back. Rook g1, she ignores that. Castles. G takes f. Queen takes f6. Now white is down 1 piece. White got 1 piece back. And she just plays down a piece. Queen e3. Doesn't have any big threats. She's just playing down a piece and saying, your pieces are bad and my pieces are good. Everything I have is good. I'm going to play f4 and bishop comes to c4. What's that? Question? Okay, so Vishy plays king h8, unpinning his bishop. f4, as I explained. Queen b6. Vishy wants to trade queens. Then he's a piece up in the endgame. Judit threatens mate in 1 with queen takes g7. Queen h6. Defending and pinning. Rook d6. Okay, if you take the rook, obviously this is checkmate. And if you take on f4 and trade queens, now your bishop is hanging on g7. So white would be up material and checkmating and stuff. So Vishy played f6. Never play f6, although not sure what else he can do. Bishop to d2, threatening to take on e5, attacking the queen. The queen has to stay here because otherwise you're getting mated. So black's position doesn't make any sense, but black is still up a piece. Okay, e4, that stops f takes e5. Bishop c4, just developing another piece. And black doesn't really have any moves. I can't suggest a good move for black. So he played b5, good Sicilian move. Bishop e6, threatening the knight. Rook a7 defends the knight. rook c6. I mean, black just can't move anything. He played a5, which is a silly move, but all right. Bishop e3 attacks the rook. Rook b7. Bishop d5, getting on the line of the rook. If it's white's move, white can play rook takes c8, winning a piece. So he played rook b8, rook c7. It's funny how this queen is tied down to the bishop. The black queen can never move off the bishop. b4. Judit plays b3, saying you're in zugzwang, you can't move. Rook b5, bishop c6. Rook takes f5. Now Judit could obviously just take on d7, which should be winning, but she played funnier, rook takes c8. Always play the most tactical move. Rook c8, bishop d7, forking the rooks. Rook c5, takes. Rook d1, threatening, rook d8 check. Queen g2, threatening queen takes e4. There's no defense to that. Black's king is still bad. Black's queen is bad. Black's bishop is bad. Black's rook is bad. Queen takes e4 is coming. Rook d8 is coming. And Vichy resigned. So, I mean, Judit just sacks a piece, 2 pieces. She's down material the whole game, but she knows that her attack is sufficient to give her compensation. She understands the position, and she just keeps seizing the initiative. And that's the way she always played. She calculated better than her opponents. She sacrificed material. She attacked the opponent's king, while at the same time, white's king was perfectly safe that game. So, an amazing game from Judit. And her games against Anand and Shirov, Morozevich, exciting players like that who like to calculate, those were great games. Sometimes she lost, sometimes she won, but they were really interesting games. Okay, last but not least, this is her countryman, Ferenc Berkes. He's also Hungarian. And this game confused me when I first looked at it, although it sort of reminds me of the last game. And this game, she's sacrificing material, and it's just on feel. She understands that she has too much compensation. I mean, I don't understand it, but then when the game's over, I'm like, all right, I guess she was right. Okay, so a French defense. Judit is white. Knight c3, knight f6, bishop g5. I think players nowadays play e5 more often, but bishop g5 is a perfectly reasonable move too. Black can play bishop e7. He took. Some people take with the g-pawn here. He took with the bishop. And these aren't the kinds of positions you want to give Judit, where it's going to be opposite side castling and she's going to attack. That's not, I'm not going to have black in this position against Judit. It's too scary. Okay, bishop e7, bishop d3, b6, knight g5, threatening h7, h6. Now she plays bishop h7 check. King goes to h8, which is the computer move. King h8. Okay, and Judit plays bishop e4, attacking the rook. Okay, you're not going to guess what black did in this position unless you've seen the game, and you haven't. And when I show you what black did, you'll never guess what white did, ever. You could guess every legal move, and it's going to be near the end. So what do you guys think black played in this position?
G5?
That's right. H takes g5. I would probably move my rook, but I would lose. Okay. Now here, Judit played a move that 99% of chess players would never think of. And the 1% who do think of it wouldn't play it. And the engine says it's the only good move. So that was a lot of hints.
Put it in H.
What's that?
Put it in H.
Yeah, but you thought of it, so it can't be right. You have to think of moves you wouldn't think of. Okay, So I'll first of all, the engine says if you take the rook, g4, now if the knight moves, bishop g5. So it doesn't like this for white.
G4.
What's that?
G4.
G4 is correct. Yeah. And if you play h4, I can play g4, and the king side's sort of blocked up. So Judit played g4. And this gives white a winning advantage. The engine says so. Okay, well now the rook is actually attacked. So he played rook b8. And now she played Mepex's move. She was thinking about you, Mepex. h4, put it in h. He played g6 and got his king tucked away. And she just played queen f4 and said, I'm down a piece, so what? So this is like the Anand game. She's attacking, she's down a piece, and she's going to be down a piece for the rest of the game, but she doesn't care. Black's pieces are all ridiculous. Black's king is never safe. White's king is always safe. And the engine understands, engines now, they just say white's winning here. They don't see any long-term prospects for black. Okay, black played bishop b7, because you want to trade pieces when, you know, the guy's checkmating you. And now Judit played a move that you would all play. Come on, somebody take a risk.
I really want to sack on h7, but I can't make it work.
Judit made it work. She played rook h7. Yeah.
That's why it's Judit.
Yeah. King takes rook, queen h2 check, rook h1. Now that's some threats on the h file. Bishop takes g5 check. So if I play king b1, you could play bishop h4 and block up the file. If I play knight takes, you could play like queen f6, and my knight's blocking my queen and rook. So you can probably get away with that. So she took, check, and played f4. All right, now black has some issues because the queen's hanging, and this is mate, and this is mate. So he played queen takes f4, bishop takes, queen takes. Now, when you were taught chess, you were taught a rook piece and a pawn is worth like a queen. And black has a rook piece and pawn for a queen. But in this position, black has some king issues, and also queen c6 is winning some material. You can't defend all your stuff here. So in this position, her opponent resigned. I wouldn't resign, but with my king like this, with all the dark squares open, there's no hope. And as soon as we trade rooks, my queen is just going to win the queen side. I think black has to play king g7, rook h8. Otherwise, just get mated on the h file. Like I'll play queen f4, queen h6. But if you're doing that, you're going to lose your queen side. Then the a pawn's hanging, b pawn's weak. If you never trade rooks, you're just going to get mated later. Queen f4. So he just gave up.
I know it's going back, but it seems like black could have played rook h8 along.
Right, and the gawking rebel on the internet suggested rook h8. And I looked at that with an engine. And it said rook takes rook, queen takes rook, it said was best. I guess if you play king takes, I play this and rook h1. It's sort of annoying. Okay, so queen takes, and then it said knight e5 is winning. And the reason I think is just tactical. So I'm going to take on f7, or I'm going to play knight c6. If you take, I take with check, you have to play king g8, and I take this, and all your pieces are hanging. I don't know how they're all hanging, but they all are. And the rook is trapped. So blacks lose all his pieces. But the queen on h8 defends the king. Yeah, I looked at rook h8 with an engine and said, no, white's winning. Because I would play rook h8 in a blitz game like that. Because, otherwise, But bishop b7 makes sense too, because we want to trade pieces. Then we could play rook h8 next move. But yeah, after rook h7, we can't. And what's funny is, the 3 games that I showed you were Judith sacrificing its sound, its long-lasting initiative, its understanding of the position. These are against 3 super, really good players, right? These are Anand, Shirov. Berkes was a Hungarian team member for many years. He's usually board 3 or 4 because they got Leko, so tough team. But Judith just rolls them over, and you don't get to top 10 in the world by not being able to do what Judith does. And she does it a lot against very strong players. And if you're going to beat Judith, which you're not going to do, you had to just try to outplay her with no tactics. And she would conjure up tactics from nothing. So you're like, oh, my position's okay. There's no tactics. I'm slightly better. And then bam, then you're like, oh. So she's very hard to play against. And only the very best players in the world, like Kramnik and Kasparov, and she's beaten both of them, had good records against her. But she still beat everybody. But I mean, she had good chances to become world champion. And I mean, saying things like women's world champion is insulting to her. She's just way too good. And the other Polgar sisters, Sophia and Susan, also had great careers. And the funniest tournament, because I was living in Europe at the time, in 1989, Sophia Polgar, who's the least regarded of the 3 Polgar sisters, she's the only one to even become a GM. She's an IM, she has GM strength. She played in a tournament in Rome in 1989 that was a Swiss, and she got 8.5 out of 9, and her performance rating was 29.05 FIDE, and she was an IM. So that's one of the greatest tournaments ever. 8.5 out of 9 against 7 GMs. And she's the weakest in the family. Tough family.
Did Judith play in any candidates tournaments or cycles? She played in San Luis, right? But
yeah, she played in she's played in World Cups, because that's what they do now, is they have those World Cups. And that's actually another personal story. In 2011 or 12, I think 12, there was a tournament in St. Louis called the Kings versus the Queens. It's 5 women, 5 men, average FIDE rating about the same, and we played each other against the other team. We played 1 game of game 25 and 1 game of chess 960 at game 25. So each person on each team played 10 games, because we played the other 5 people twice. And Judith Polgár was supposed to play in that tournament, but she was playing in the World Cup. And the only way she wouldn't make the tournament is if she kept winning matches in the World Cup. And she'd have to win 5 matches. And matches 3, 4, and 5, she was paired up. 1 and 2, she won because she was paired down. And unfortunately, she did win match 3 and match 4 and match 5. And we didn't know she was winning match 5 until she won it. So they had to have last-second replacement, and they had to get somebody lower rated for our team, so the team still had the same average rating. So we had some other woman play instead of her. We had some other guy play on board 5 who was lower rated. And then we still had the tournament, but Judith couldn't make the tournament because she was too busy winning the World Cup. Terrible. Come on, Judith, you should play in St. Louis. So I would have played Judith Polgár in that event. I would have had a good chance against her. And because of that, Hikaru got 9.5 out of 10. I got 7 out of 10, and our team won. But things would have been different if Judith was there, because then the other players on the women's team are more confident. They got Judith on board 1. So yeah, that was unfortunate, because, I mean, it was good for her. She's winning the World Cup. So she's making an extra 50,000 or so by winning these matches. So still good. but it ruined our tournament in St. Louis. We wanted to have Nakamura and Judit Polgár, and we only got Nakamura. What a letdown. Anyway, I want you to read more about Judit Polgár. Don't forget, her book is coming out. It's a picture book about her on July 25th. Probably buy it online or buy it in stores. I want to thank, once again, Robert Veneris for sponsoring the lecture. I want to thank all the people for showing up. And Judit Polgár is still doing a lot of stuff in chess. If you want to watch her do live game analysis for these super tournaments, I really recommend it because you can still see how strong she is. Thanks for coming, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the lecture. Bye.
Bye.
Good stuff. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Ben.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. See you.